Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi brachas, Perek Zayin, Halacha Beis, and Gimel. We left in the Ois V'Hadr's edition. We're going to be learning Daf Ayin Hey, and we left off on Ayin Hey Amadalef all the way on top of the Amid. So where did we leave off? The Gemara had a question on Rabbi Yirmiyah on Daf Ayin Daled Amadalef. After the Gemara established that Yitaka don't have to have all 10 to be eating bread to be able to mention Hashem's name during the Zimun. 9-1 is okay, 8-2 is okay, 2 meaning the two only ate vegetables. 7-3, according to the Shinu Nuschais here in the Yerushalmi, even 6-4, so that is established. However, Rabbi Yirmiyah had a doubt, he had a question, he didn't know whether the one who did not eat bread, the vegetable eater, can he be the one leading the Zimun? He didn't know. And on that, the Gemara asked the question. That was the whole Ayin Daled, Amid Beis, that we have this lengthy brisa that recorded the story that happened with Rab Shimon ben Shattach. And he who participated in a Su'udah with Yanai HaMelech and his sister and the queen, he was given not bread to eat. In the Bavli, actually, Mebrachas Memches, it says that they gave him a cup of wine, which is the same Nakuda. It was not bread, and he led the Zimun. And not only that, Rabbi Yirmiyah commented regarding that whole story, that even though the Chachamim disagreed with some part of the story, unlike Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Yirmiyah insists that their disagreement, their machlokes in the story was Benigei Din, whether you can fulfill your Nazirus outside Eretz Yisrael, and then when you come to Eretz Yisrael, can you bring the Korbanos right away? There is where the Chachamim argued with Rab Shimon ben Shattach. Machlokes only al harishayna, but Rabbi Yirmiyah holds regarding his ability, his capacity, his legal capacity to lead the benching. Everyone is in consent that he indeed is allowed to do it. In other words, Rabbi Yirmiyah knew bevadois that you don't have to eat the bread to lead the zimun. You could lead the zimun even though you only ate vegetables. So make up your mind: is Rabbi Yirmiyah in doubt, or is Rabbi Yirmiyah in the state of vadois? That's where we left off. The Gemara is going to say that this is actually subject to a machlokes tanoim, as we'll see. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Benegeya, one Tana was certain, Benegeya, another Tana was in doubt, as we're going to speak, and that's going to close this whole sugya. And then we're going to go to the third halacha of the Perek, Mishnah, the new Mishnah. Here, the Mishnah is going to speak about exactly what is the nusach of Zimun, Keitzad Mizamnin, and in the Mishnah, we're going to have two arguments. First, we're going to have an argument between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosi Haglili. Benegeya, does the nusach of the zimun change once you hit 10? Rabbi Akiva, and so we paskin many times, therefore we refer to it as Shitas Chachamim, holds that no, the change is only from 3 to 10. Nevarech she'achalu, nevarech elikeinu she'achalu. Once you hit 10, whether you have 100, whether you have 1,000, whether you have 10,000, the nusach always remains the same. Rabbi Yosi Haglili argues with Rabbi Akiva, argues with the Chachamim, as we'll see in the Mishnah, and he holds exactly these numbers, that when you come to 100, there's another change. When it comes to 1,000, and when it comes to 10,000, there's a shinoi in the nusach. There's a second machlokes in the Mishnah, will be between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael, and again, the second machlokes, we don't paskan like Rabbi Akiva, and that is, what is the nusach of Baruch? Rabbi Akiva says, Baruch es Hashem. Rabbi Shmuel is the one that holds, no, you have to say, Baruch es Hashem, HaMavoirach, as we'll explain what's behind that when we learn the Mishnah. In the Gemara, we're going to have various stories of Amiroyim. And again, what nusach of Zimun did they use? Will be very interesting. And finally, we're going to have a Gavaldike concept, that just like there is an Inyan of Shemea Kohen, and even when I have to be the one saying, if I did not say it, you said it, but I heard it in many circumstances, my listening is tantamount, is mamish as if I said it myself, which is great. We're going to be seeing that Amen, the Amen is, let's say, adds a dimension to the bracha, the saying of Amen. Who says Amen? Not the one that said the bracha. So we will also apply Shomeya Ka'ina, that the one who said the bracha, who now heard Amen, because of his hearing of Amen, will also get that added dimension, Shomeya Ka'ina. even though he himself doesn't say Amen. And there's going to be a certain wrinkle connected to that. And then we'll begin. Why is it that when you have 10, do we go from Nevarech She'achalnu to Nevarech Elokeinu? That fits the general rule that Kol Davar Shebekadusha, including saying God's name in certain circumstances, not in the context of learning. When you read a Chumash, a Pasuk in Tanakh, you can say Hashem's name. That's Limud HaTorah. But in the context of prayer, to say God's name, you have to have 10. What is the source of that? We have a similar sugya also in the Babli. We'll see over Toich, Eda, Eda, and we'll see how far we can get into that topic. But without any further ado, let's begin on Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph, all the way on top of the Am. Okay, so answers the Gemara. Do you want to know why do we have a apparent inconsistency? What is the sheet of Rabbi Yirmiyah? Says the Gemara like this: that on the tzricha, we have this many times, guys. The word the tzricha doesn't mean to need. Tzricha is your state of doubt. When you are in doubt, you need to know what it is. Where did we? And a chanami. Rabbi Yirmiyah daf ayin daled damed daled. Why was he in doubt? Because he was in doubt. Bishitas chachamim, as we'll see in a moment. The whole ayin daled damed beis hein the pshitale. That is when you were focusing on the shita of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. How great is that? Okay. Now, just a second. Okay. I want to just go back to one more layer of what we learned at the end of yesterday's share. Rabbi Yechanan was the one that said that the Chachamim argue with Shimon ben Shatta. Rabbi Yechanan said it. And then we had Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Abba. Remember, Rishayna Shniya. When Rabbi Yechanan says that the Chachamim argue with Shimon ben Shatta, Rabbi Yechanan meant all of the Chachamim, including Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. That's very important. So in order to say that all the Chachamim, including Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, argues with Rabbi Shimon ben Shatta, that can only be Benegea, the question of Naziris B'chutz La'aretz, because Rabbi Yirmiyah was certain, guys, that's the key, that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he agrees that you don't have to have bread to lead the Zimun. So in other words, you don't get confused that when we say that Hadab Shila Shimon Gamliel, what we learned about the Chachamim, we learned the Chachamim is Rabbi Yechanan says that all of the Chachamim argued with him. You can't say all of the Chachamim, including the Rashbag, argued with Rabbi Shimon ben Shatta, because Rabbi Shimon Gamliel for sure agrees, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that you don't have to have bread to lead the Zimun. Where do we have this price? It's a price. That Tani, we learned in a price. That Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Allah Hesev Achalimab. So you have people that were already eating a meal. Someone enters the room in the middle of the meal and he gets up and he reclines and he eats with them. So Afal Pi Shaloi Achal Kazayis Dagan, even though he didn't have a Kazayis of Dagan, Mizamnin. Now I want you to know and be medayik in the following words: Mizamnin versus Mizamnin Olav. Just to know what that means. Mizamnin Olav implies, Chevra, not that you can lead the Zimun, that if we need the minimum number, like you need 3, there's only 2. Third guy comes in, now Mizamnin Olav. The word Mizamnin Stam doesn't only mean that you're counted as a number. Mizamnin also means you can actually lead the Zimun. Hesev is important for another reason, because we learned in last chapter that if you're not Hesev, we never apply Shemea Koine B'chlal. So that's so nowadays, yes, because that's when we learned the Charedim, that Hesev in the Mishnah means you have kavanah to eat together in the Chutz Shamish. If you designate a place to eat, okay. So coming back over here, so beautiful. Now I know, Chevra, that there are different girsois, and it actually, what's very unusual. See, first of all, it is in our Gemara, this brayso does not begin with the words Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. What makes it worse? What are the next words? Divrei Chachamim. You know what the irony is? Look how different the nusach is. We're adding. This is a girsa. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel in the beginning of the Braisa. And when we say the words Mizamin, we're putting in the Kuda, a dot. And now, even though normally when you say the words Divrei Chachamim, it goes to what was written above it. Here, Divrei Chachamim is going to go to that which we're going to write afterwards. That Divrei Chachamim, what is the sheet of the Chachamim? And now we're not add, and who has to explain it? Rabbi Yaakov Barach b'shem Rabbi Yechanan. It wasn't clear in the Braisa, so Amoraim explained now, which is no lo'olam ein mezamnin. Listen to these words. Olav acher yochel kezayis. This is very important. Ein mezamnin olav. What are we talking about? We're not only talking about that he can't lead the zimun. Ein mezamnin olav means min hakotza la'kotza. You can't even join the zimun if you don't eat a kezayis. Now that is something that the Charedim will hold. One second. The Charedim is the problem with this is going to be: did we not learn before that? Fragt die Gemara Tani Shnayim Pas ve'echad Yarek Mizamnin. So the Gemara says that Braisa has to follow Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So now we have Menakotza la Kotza, which is that we have a Kabbalah that the Chachamim hold that if you don't eat a Kazayis, you can't even join in the number. Hold on. What about everything that we learned about 9 and 1 and 8 and 2? So many say that 9 and 1, 8 and 2, 7 and 3, and according to the Yerushalmi, 6 and 4, that you can join is because, David, you have 3 people that ate bread. The question is only, can you say Hashem's name? Even that's the way we're going to learn. The Chachamim hold, yes, you could join. Mizamnin Olav. You can't lead the Zimun, but at least you can join. When are you not even going to be included in the Zimun? When you're going from 2 to 3. The Chachamim hold that when you're going from 2 to 3, all 3 have to have bread. By the way, we don't paskin that way, but that's the sheet of the Chacham. And Rab Shimon Gamliel holds, you don't even need to have 3 that ate the bread, and more than that, even by the 3, the one who didn't eat the Kazayis Dagan is allowed to lead the benching. And everything fits now. So since we know that the Rashba clearly holds that not only do you not need to eat bread, you can make up not only the 10, you can make up 3, and you can lead the Zimun. So therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah says that if all of the Chachamim argued with Rav Shimon ben Shatach, it couldn't have been in this topic, because at least Rashbag agrees that he could have made the Zimun. It must have been because of the din of Nazirs. Where was his Safek? His Safek was B'shitas Chachamim. Now everything is, again, the Chachamim hold, clearly. From 2 to 3, if you want to be part of the 3, you have to have bread. Not to talk about. But the Chachamim will be Moida that if you have 3 that ate bread, you're making a Zimun. But you also want to say Elokeinu. Oh, for that you have to have, let's go with the Yerushalmi. Minimum 6-4. You have 3 that ate bread. You had 6 that ate bread. 4 didn't. Everyone holds you can say Elokeinu. What about in this case? Can you lead the Zimun? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Maybe when we say La'olam Emizam Avshich Kezayis is only from 2 to 3. The moment you have 3, you can even lead the Zimun. That's the sub. Or maybe no. To go to 3, you have to eat bread. Once you have 3 that ate bread, you want to make 10. 6 ate bread, you can make Elokeinu. But to lead the Zimun, I don't know. Beautiful. Okay. Now let's move on. Says the Mishnah, Ketzad Mizamnin. We're speaking about the Nusach of Zimun. How does it work? So B'shleisha, when you have the minimum, which is the minimum of 3, when you have 3 people, then Omer, you say Nevarech. Guys, what do we say? Nevarech she'achalnu mishaloi. But what happens, says the Mishnah, B'shleisha v'hu, which means you have the 3 without including yourself. Nevarech means let us bless. So once you have 3 without the leader, you are optionally able to say Baruch Shachalnu Mishaloi. You know what Baruch means? Baruch is when one person is telling the others what they should do. Bless God. You have to have 3 people that are blessing God. Well, if there are 3 people, let's say I'm leading the Zimun. If there's 3 people without me, I am able to say the Nusach even without including myself. What is important is that Baruch Hu is not what you need to do. The Gemara is going to say it's always better to include yourself. It's better to say what we do, Nevarech. But if you only have three, you may not say Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu is you're telling others what they should do, because the others are only two. There's only three. You're leading. So when there's three, you have to say Nevarech. When you have Shloisha V'hu, and by the way, it's not just three and him. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're not saying Elokeinu, but you are able to say Baruch Hu. Because since the needs to have three, in other words, it has to be a collective from three. If I'm telling you guys what to do, which means I excluded myself, then the you guys have to be three. That's what the Mishnah is saying. And the Gemara is going to say it clearly. Because you need three for Zim. Now, what happens when there's 10? When there's 10, Basara. Oimer, here you say, Nevarech Elokeinu. That's the difference. Not Nevarech She'achala Mishaloi, but Nevarech Elokeinu She'achala Mishaloi. In the Shin Nuskois, and by the way, that's what people get confused. Even in my mind yesterday, I was going Elokeinu, Lelokeinu, Nusach Chabad is Elokeinu. But you already see in the Mishnah itself, you have other Girsois that put a lamed in front of Elokeinu, and indeed, that's something that goes until today. How do you do Zimun, guys? Depends what family you come from, right? Baruch Lelokeinu. No, Baruch Elokeinu. I know, but there are other people that say with a lamed. Okay, anyways, in our he's able not to say the word Nevarech, which means let us. Baruch Hu means you guys. You need to have three. If he's speaking to the you has to be three. If there's only three and he's speaking to whoever's there, how many people are there? Two people can do Zimun. You cannot say Baruch Hu Shachal Mishalei. When you have three, optionally, you are also able to say Baruch. Same thing with 10. If there's 10, you have to say let us. Nevarech Elokeinu. But Ba'asara V'hu, if you have 11 or 12 or 13, the moment you have 10, aside of yourself, optionally, you can say Baruch Hu. Now, says the Mishnah, I don't know what Kevin is doing over here, but okay. Echad. Yeah. Okay, we know that. Echad Asara. The same is going to be whether you have 10. And the same will be if you have Eser Riboy. Eser Riboy is 10 times 10,000. In other words, this Tanakama is, and as we'll see, this is Shitas Rabbi Akiva, which is also going to be referred to as Shitas Chachamim because the Chachamim Paskan like Rabbi Akiva. Makes no difference. Once you hit 10, the Nusach will always remain the same. Now you have to put a dot. See, normally the Mishnah says, David Rabbi Akiva, right? Mishnah doesn't do it. So it appears the Mishnah is contradicting itself. The Mishnah just said, Echad Asara ve'echad Eser Riboy. And now the Gemara is going to clarify, we're changing the Tana. Now comes Rabbi Yossi Aglili. What does he hold? No, not Echad Asara, Echad 10 times 10,000. The Meya, if you hit from 10 to 100, it's the same. The moment you hit 100, Oimer, you say Nevarech, Elokeinu, Nevarech, Lashem Elokeinu, or Nevarech, Hashem Elokeinu. Again, that's the Girsois. In other words, you don't only say Shem Elokim, you evoke Shem Havaya. Same thing. What happens if you have 101? So then, since what allows you to say Havaya is 100, if the leader is not including himself, which he ideally should, but if he's not, if he's saying you guys, for that you have to have 101. The Me'avahu, if there's him and 100, then he could say Baruch. Now, what happens when you hit 1,000? Be'elef, there's another upgrade. Here we say, whether lamed or not a lamed, Nevarech, Hashem Elokeinu, but what do we add? Elokei Yisrael. Now, be'elef he could say, right, Baruch Hu, Hashem or Lashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael. The next change is B'riboy. Riboy is 10,000. What happens with 10,000? Finally, you say, Nevarech, Ade Nishtalamed, Hashem Elokeinu. So far, Hashem, 100, right? Shem Lekeinu Lekei Yisrael is 1,000. What are you adding? Lekei Tzivakos. It's Gavaldik. We're learning this already in the 30 days before Yud. We appreciate Shem Tzivakos. Yoshev Hakruvim. And now comes another Chiddush. The Mishnah never addressed these words before. How do you conclude? The Mishnah, what do we say? We say Nevarech she'achalnu mishaloi. Right? Nevarech she'achalnu mishaloi. The Mishnah never said that. Just Nevarech. What are we saying over here? Not she'achalnu mishaloi. We're concluding with the words al hamazon she'achalnu. 1 second. Now, in the Bavli, just to say, the Gemara explicitly writes over there that where do you have the option? Again, it's an option of not saying she'achalnu mishaloi, but to say al hamazon she'achalnu is dafka when you have 10,000, and when you have less than 10,000, you have to say beferish she'achalnu mishaloi. Why? Because when you have, because what happens when you say nevarech ala mazon she'achalnu? It could be understood. You're not even thanking God. You're not, when you have less than 10. You're not saying it has to be from 10 onwards. When you don't say God's name, what's the problem? Nevarech, let's bless she'achalnu mishaloi. Who might that sound like a blessing? Ala mazon she'achalnu could be a blessing the balabas. Nevarech al hamazon, let's bench because he gave us food. It could be mashma you're benching the balabais. That's what the Gemara says. Only when you evoke God's name can you say al hamazon she'achalnu, and you understand you're thanking God for giving you the food. But that's another nuance, which the Mishnah only mentioned after it mentioned 10,000. So it's not from the 10,000; it's from 10 onwards. Yeah, what did you want to say?
You go with the mayor or the mayor, but then you go Ella or Ella.
Yeah.
Go from more specific in the mayor to more generic with the.
Not generic. Me, including me, or just you guys?
Well, just in the Baruch, you say
the whole thing.
How does it go with Baruch?
Baruch Hu she'achalnu mishaloi. Baruch Hu Elokeinu she'achalnu mishaloi. Baruch Hu Hashem Elokeinu she'achalnu mishaloi. Nevarech just means us. Baruch Hu means you. Finished. Now, you see, again, normally the whole nusach is, there's a reason for it. It's unusual. That has to be Rabbi Yosef Aglili. And now it's Rabbi Yosef Aglili explaining himself. Rabbi Yosef Aglili Yoimer. Why do I hold that there are these incremental changes in the nusach? Yeah, indeed, because according to the size of the kol, accordingly, there has to be another nusach. What's the source of that? It says in Tehillim Samaches, B'makehelois, Baruch Hu Elokim, Adnai, Mimkori Yisrael, and B'makehelois means in groups, in Kehilois, Loshen, Rabim, mashma, that there are different types of Kehilois. Not, it's, if you don't have 10, you don't have a Kehila. Where does the Kehila begin? When you have 10. Once you have 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, then there would not have been a Lashon Rabim. Even though Gemara is going to explain why Rabbi Akiva won't agree with that proof. But for him, that's a remes that they're different. Now, doesn't say over there 100, 1,000, 10,000. Correct. But we learn from there that there are different madregas in a Kehila. And how does that affect Lamai Nafkamina? How are you going to bless God? So in assemblages, right, in groups, different types, bless Hashem. Okay. Rabbi Akiva will argue he's not responding to what I do with the Mamakehelois. Ultimately, it's going to be a Kri and a Ksiv, and that's going to be Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yosef Shitosayu. But he says, no, Mamatzinu Beis HaKnesses. We're speaking about Zimah. But let's appreciate that the reason why you need to have 10 to add a Likenu, that follows the general rule that called Davar Shabbat, and you need to have 10. It's about now in a Beis HaKnesses, is there any difference between 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000? No. It's all the same. As long as you have the minimum of 10, you're good. And what do we say as an example? By Baruch Hu es Hashem. So, and not when you have 100, you say Baruch Hu es Hashem Elikim, or Baruch Hu es Hashem Elikim Elokei Yisrael Yoshev Akruv. You don't do that. So why would you do a different invention? Now comes the second argument in the Mishnah. So now that Rabbi Akiva spoke out the Nusach of Baruch Hu, and it's not that Rabbi Akiva only gave the opener. Rabbi Akiva's Baruch Hu was Baruch Hu as Hashem. So Rabbi Shmuel says to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel is not talking about Zimun. He's saying that's not the way you say Baruch Hu. And I'll tell you more than that. What was the whole point in the Mishnah? 3, and Vahu. Right, 10, Vahu. 100. What is that? That if you need to have 10 people to evoke God's name, how, and Baruch Hu is not including yourself. Baruch Hu means you guys do it. So there's a kasha. The kasha is, if you only have 10 people in the shul, Rabbi Akiva, how can you say you guys bless Hashem? You guys is the 9. 9 is not enough to bless God. So the only solution will be is not to say Nevarech. You can say Baruch Hu, but when you add the words HaMevoirach, who is already blessed by us. So the HaMevoirach is where you are including yourself. Baruch Hu es Hashem HaMevoirach. That's what the Rashidilo says. Look inside HaMevoirach, and the left column, the third line from the top, he's blessed in the mouths of all, because that was the whole point of the Mishnah. The difference in the Mishnah until between the Varech and Baruch Hu is whether you are including or whether you are excluding yourself. Okay. Says the Gemara. Let's begin with a couple of stories. Quickly.
He says Baruch Hu. Then when he gets to 1,000, he says Nevarech.
Whenever you add something and you need 10,000, if it's only 10,000, you can't say Baruch Hu, you have to say Nevarech. Yes. It's consistent. No, David, whenever you need a number, if we have exactly the number, you have to include yourself. You can't do Zimun with 2. So how can you say you guys bench? You guys are 2. If there's only 3 and I'm saying that, then I'm excluding myself. So you have to say Nevarech. When you have 3 and 1, you could say Baruch. And the same thing in every step. Says the Gemara, Dolma means a story, not maybe. An event. Dolma says the Gemara. Rabbi Ze'edav, Rabbi Yaakov, Bar Achav, Rabbi Chia, Bar Bo. V'Rab Chanina, Chavrin, the Rabbanan. These are 4, right? 4, not 3. They were sitting and they were eating. And Nosav Rabbi Yaakov, Bar Achav, Okaso Beirach, he did the Zimun. What did we learn in our Mishnah? The moment you have more than 3, kept on insisting that Baruch Hu is optional. Well, it doesn't say that in the Mishnah. It sounds like in the Mishnah that the moment you have 4, you don't say Nevarech, you say Baruch Hu. What did he do? He still said Nevarech and he didn't say Baruch Hu. So Amalei Bechia Bar Ba, come on, that's the Mishnah. It sounds like he's running against the Mishnah. So Amar Lei Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha, right, who was the one who benched, told him, did we not learn a brisa that clarified the Mishnah that ein medagdekin bedavar? When the Mishnah says shloisha v'hu, it's not dafke. You have to say Baruch Hu. We're not medagdek. We'll see in a moment. Actually, it's even better to say Baruch. But he began that ein medagdekin bedavar, and then he kept on quoting. The end of the brisa is bein she'amar nevarech, bein she'amar Baruch Hu. It says ein tois v'nes al kach. Don't chop him. Don't pounce on him, which is what you did to me. That part of the brisa, which obviously Rabbi Chia Bar Ba did not know, right? That's good enough of a response. The next part of the brisa is very harsh. It was not needed. But if you want to defend yourself, don't kill your opponent. Just defend yourself. Now he continued. Now what's his big aveda? He's quoting the whole brisa. Then it says in the brisa that the hanoikten means only fussy people. Like when the Balkaida is reading, there's certain type of people that correct all the mistakes. That's called noiktim, and that's a derogatory thing. The ones who are looking to get you, they are toiv shenois al kach. They're going to go and why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? In other words, even though these are the words of the brisa, Rabbi Chia Bar Ba, by quoting the brisa until the end, who did he make feel bad? Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha, Rabbi Chia Bar Ba. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Zera was the teacher. Rabbi Zera got upset. Why did he get upset? Begin the tzvach Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha Rabbi Chia Bar Ba because he called him a noigdana. Now, did he call him a noigdana? The Brisa called him a noigdana. Very good. David is saying nud nik. Very good. Works. Perfect. That's where it comes from. A dafkenik, but a nudnik. Now, again, what did he do already? That's a beautiful Musar Haskell. He defended himself. Don't quote the whole brisa. Don't forget that Rabbi Chia Barba never heard the Braisa. It was not expected for them. Whatever they learned, they expected to remember. But if you never learned it, you don't know it. Beautiful. Okay, turning to Ahmed. Next story. Says the Gemara. Shmuel Amar. Shmuel says another madrega that it's not only that ein toifs and oisay al kach. In other words, they're equal. No, Shmuel says eini moitzi atzmi min haklal. I never excluded myself. Dafke nevarech, not baruch. Look inside the top charedim. He went beyond the Braisa. It's not you have an option. Why? Because that word is a word of inclusion. Never exclude yourself. Says the Gemara, Hativon means question, massive. I have a question on Shmuel. Shmuel is saying never say Baruch Hu. Always include yourself in what about Birchas HaTorah? Hare Birchas HaTorah. Hare Yom Baruch Hu. What's the answer to that? We said it when we spoke in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel. That's different because by Baruch Hu, you say the word Hamavoidach. Mikivan the Yemen Hamavoidach explains Rav Oven Farenfening Shmuel, who Eino Moitzi Atzma Min HaKlal, mamish like Rabbi Shmuel. But if you're going to conclude with the words Hamavoidach Befi Kol HaBriyos Tarashadilio, that includes you. Hamavoidach. If you're not going to add the Hamavoidach, in benching you don't have Hamavoidach. In davening you do have it. So in davening you can say Baruch. Okay. Now, says the Gemara, Rab Abba Bar Zemina, he had the merit to be Mishamish Rab Ze'eda. Rab Ze'eda was his Rebbe. Shimush Talmid Chacham. Shimush literally, he was servicing a Mizagle Kasam. Moizgin means then, technically it means he poured him a cup of wine. Actually, since the wine was very concentrated, in the times of Chazal, you would add a lot of water, 3-1, 4-1. There was a big ratio. That's called mezigas hakois. But that's the way. That's the way that Rab Abba Bar Zemino was mishamish his Rebbe Rab Ze'eda. So Amalei Rab Ze'eda tells him sav birich means take, and birich doesn't mean make a bracha. Guys, we're not speaking about zimun at all. We're speaking about boire priyagofen. So we know that wine is not included in the meal. When I'm meshamish, we just learned, right, David? Meshamish is part of the meal. But so what? So when I'm sitting to eat right now on my table, if I make hamoitzi, I'm not going to make the bracha on the schnitzel, but I have to make a bracha on the wine. Since they were reclining together, a meshamish is like reclining. So the Rebbe Rab Ze'eda is going to have a boire priyagofen. So he tells Rab Abba Bar Zemina, take for yourself a cup and listen to my bracha. That's the meaning. I'm making a bracha. Yes. No, have in mind to be yoitzi. I'm being yoitzi. And then he added, and Amalei, hold on, that's not enough. And have in mind that you're going to be, that this won't be the only cup of wine. In other words, since we learned in a Braisa that Hashamish Mavarach al Kol Kois V'Kois, because when you are invited to eat by someone's table, and in this case, a shamish, when you get a slice of bread, you can expect that there'll be another slice of bread. So you don't have to make another hamoitzi. Wine was so chashiv that if you're the balabas, you know how many you're going to have. But if I'm not the balabas, I'm given a cup of wine. As far as I know, that's the end of the line. And therefore, if another cup of wine is brought out, I have to make a bracha again. But if lechatchil, I'm being told, not only have in mind to be yoitze, my boire priyagofen, because I want you to have wine, there'll be more cups of wine, so this bracha will be for all the cups of wine. Now, see, normally Amar Lei, it's hard to chap. Amar Lei is back and forth. All of these Amar Leis is one direction. And weiter says Rab Ze'eda to Rab Abba Bar Zemina, that kamo da ano yodati, that just like I have to have in mind, mafka yasach yedei chavasach beberchasa, that's a big rule, that if I want to be moitzi you, when I want to be moitzi you, I have to have kavana that I'm also doing it for you. Not only I'm doing it for me also, just like there is that necessity and I'm having the kavana. As you're having the kavana to be yoitzi, now this is the big chiddush of Amen. Kain have daitov. Mapka yedei choivasi ba'amin, which is mamash amazing. That there is some unique dimension that's added with Amen. And like the Rashadilio brings from from Babli Daf Brachas Nun Gimel. The words are Gadol Ha'oyna Amen Yoisrim and Hamavarich. If I'm not mistaken, that was also the theme of Masechtas Nazir. This whole question, like how great is Amen? I think there was a machlokes there. Maybe even better not to make the bracha. So now the word of Rabbi Zajac was that was the chiddush. That you know what? Just like I can make the hagafen for you, when you answer Amen, and I listen to your Amen, I'm gonna get the added advantage of Amen. But just like when I make the bracha of hagafen, even though you are physically hearing, it's not enough. I have to have in mind to be moitzi you. Then doesn't work. I want to get the advantage of listening to your Amen, but you, when you say Amen, have in mind, you're not only saying it for you, you're saying it also for me. And I can't say Amen because the rule is, there are exceptions, is that you don't answer Amen after your own bracha. Great. So now, says the Gemara, I want you to know that Masnisa Amar came. That indeed we have this in a Mishnah. This is Rosh Hashanah and the Bavli Daf Lamed Beis. That's Menegeh something else, but it's the same Nakuda that Hamasasek, when I blow the shofar. So if I have to have in mind that I'm blowing it for you. If I'm Misasek, that means that if I'm blowing it absent-mindedly, then lo yotza. I'm not yotza. And not only am I not yotza, but Hashemeya min Hamasasek, also lo yotza. So what is he trying to prove? He's trying to prove that, hold on, why don't we say, if I'm a sasek, that means I'm blowing it stam to entertain myself. Why don't we say I'm blowing it? The listener, if the listener is being machaven to get the obligation, so there is the sound and there is the kavanah. We don't say that. We don't say that. What is needed? That the guy who's blowing has to have the kavanah to be moitzi. And therefore, Rabbi Zajac is saying that even though I know that there's something special about Amen, and I have in mind to get the Amen. If you don't have in mind to be moitzim me with the Amen, the kavanah of the listener won't do it. That is what he's proving from Rosh Hashanah. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, let's go. So the problem is that, like we pointed it out, when you learn the Mishnah, the flow doesn't work. The Mishnah didn't put a dot, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yosef ben Aglili Yomer. The Mishnah makes a statement that whether you have 10, whether you have 10,000, it's the same. And then in the next word, the Mishnah says, when you have 100, Nevarech Hashem Elokeinu. So it doesn't work. So I'm Rabbi Yechon, no. That before that was the Tanakama. We'll see Rabbi Akiva. From here on, Zudiv Rabbi Yosef Aglili. Until now was who? Now we know it's Rabbi Akiva. Who does Rabbi Yechon evoke? Chachamim. Why does he call them the Chachamim? That's the way Rabbi Yochanan is saying we paskin like Rabbi Akiva. Because now it became everyone's opinion, which is Echad Eser, the Echad Eser Riboy, we make no change. Rava Amar, Halacha, Kemisha Omer, Echad Eser, the Echad Eser Riboy. And that's just right there explaining why Rabbi Yochanan said Divrei Chachamim when really it is the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we begin like this. What's a given? We see from the Mishnah, and especially now that we said we don't paskin like Rabbi Yosef Aglili. There's only one change: less than 10, 10. What's the change? When you have 10 or more, Elokeinu. Some people say Lelokeinu. Why? Where does that come from? Again, a given. That's not a unique din for Zimun. That follows the rule that a davar shebekadusha, you have to have 10. Where do we learn that from? Says the Gemara. Now the words here, the Gemara goes, the Yerushalmi is very bekitzer. Minayin le'eda shehi asara. What's a given? You can only say Elokeinu when you are in a congregation. How do you know that it's a 10? Okay. So Rabbi Ba and Rabbi Yasa, in the name of Rabbi Yechon, they say Nemar Kan Eida. Kan is a pasuk in Emoir. What's the lashon pasuk? No, not yet. That's from where we learn. But what's the source that a davar shebekadusha can only be said in 10? So the pasuk he quotes, look inside the Charedim 5 lines on the bottom. And I know that such a pasuk does not say anywhere. But don't freak out. The whole Yerushalmi is bekitzer. He writes, read the Charedim. Menegdashti b'toich Adas b'nei Yisrael. Guys, open up an Emoid. I promise you, you will not find these words. It says, "V'nigdashti b'toich b'nei Yisrael." But let's first read them all. So he writes it. It says, "V'nigdashti b'toich adas b'nei Yisrael." And so you have Ada, right? And mikan hold on. Let's go back in the Gemara and I'll speak out some another detail. Nemar kan Ada. And now, David, you said good. Nemar lahalan. Lahalan means meragl. David, good. Shlach. Right? And my Ada shenemar lahalan was asara, the Ada, that the derogatory Ada, because Yeshua and Kalev remain tzaddik. So you have 12 minus 2, you have 10. So af Ada shenemar kan asara. No, when you read Yerushalmi, what do you think erroneously? It's a Gzeira Shava. What's the Gzeira Shava? Ada. Ada. Of course not. Of course not. It doesn't say Menigdash b'toich hadas b'nei Yisrael. Nor was then. No. So you have to remember. So the Marafulda, he reminds us that we have in the Bible. See, everything is bekissim in the Yerushalmi. We're missing one step. You know what the one step David is? It's called toich Ada Ada. What's the toich? It says Menigdashti b'toich b'nei Yisrael. B'toich b'nei Yisrael. It says by koirech he badlu mitoich Ada. Now I know by the Meraglim the Ada there was not 10, much bigger. But since you have the word by the Meraglim toich ha'eda, toich takes the Ada ki'ilu the word Ada is written in Emoir v'nigdashti b'toich adas. In other words, but that's classic to the Yerushalmi. It's just reminding you have to know a lot. So toich is what puts the Ada from koirach into Emoir. Now that you have the Ada and Emoid, now you go Ada. So really, the first shita, and so it is befedish in the Bible. It's called toich Ada. So two-way. Now, the only thing is, what are we saying? The toich comes from? It comes from, we're learning it from Meraglim. We're learning it from Koirach and now Meraglim. So Amar Rab Simen, no, I don't need that. I don't need double. You anyways need the toich. I can go straight toich and get a minion without the Ada. V'nigdashti ein davar shebekedusha pachas masara. Why? It says v'nigdashti b'toich b'nei Yisrael. It says lahalan. Lahalan is parshas Miketz. What does it say? That way by Yovoyu b'nei Yisrael lishboir bar b'toich haboyim. How many were they? There were 10 brothers before Binyamin came. When they came the first time, how many brothers came? 10 brothers. So ma toich amar lahalan was 10 men. How beautiful is that? Yosef was, they didn't know he was there, but he was not the ones that came. Binyamin was held back. Afkan asar. So in other words, you anyways need a toich. So they had this ein adam doirish gzeira shava element came here from his Rebbe. So they had toich Ada. So says Rab Simon, hold on. You anyways need toich. Maybe when you had toich, go lachatchila ribbe. I'm Rabbi Yosef, but Rabun, I'll tell you why we others don't agree with that. Because im mitoich at yolev, what does it actually say over there? It says vayivoy b'nei Yisrael b'toich who? Who does the toich refer to? To the b'nei Yisrael, which were 10? No, the b'nei Yisrael came b'toich haboyim. What does it mean b'toich haboyim? They came amongst all the people that came to get food in Mitzrayim. All the people was Sagin, and many people came. Doesn't work. You can't just do it with toich. Hello. Nemar kan b'nei Yisrael. Go with the b'nei Yisrael. It says Mikdashti b'toich b'nei Yisrael. It says Vayivoyu b'nei Yisrael. Malahalan b'nei Yisrael. Malahalan b'nei Yisrael. Ma b'nei Yisrael shenem malahalan by Miketz was 10. Afkan 10. In other words, there is an insistence of Rab Simon not to make a double Gzeira Shava. Toich won't work. Toich would have been better because at least you don't make up your Gzeira. Toich Ada, you don't even Ada. Toich, if you want to make a Gzeira Shava without a double, B'nei Yisrael. I wish I can go further, but time is
Rabbi.
Yes.
So it sounds like we're learning Zimun from Minyan, right?
Yes.
So does that mean that theoretically, if you had 9 people that ate, let's say the 10th guy is a katan, you could give him a sefer Torah or a chumash, and then you can make a navarach elokenu?
You missed yesterday, Danny.
I didn't miss it. I listened to the whole thing, of course.
So what's the question?
I'm saying, so whatever you would say that applies to minyan would apply also.
That's exactly what we learned yesterday. Yeah, that if you have a cotton, you can be inside of a cotton.
But
yeah.
also by
also
zima.
by minyan. I mean, there's many ways. That's the way we learned the Gemara. Also by minyan. I just want to, but I'm saying, did we learn something big? I'm saying when you ask a person who learned a little bit, how do you know you have to have a minyan? He'll say toich eda. We learned something you don't have in the Bavli. No, we learned it from Bnei Yisrael. And another line of Kamina, what happens if you have the Shvatim or Shiftei Ka? The Shvatim is a minyan of Tzaddikim. Maybe that's the difference. The Eda by the Maraglim were a minyan of Rishoyim. So what minyan do you want to daven in? They're arguing who to daven with. Either daven with Tzaddikim, daven with the Shvatim. I played the Shvatim were Tzaddikim and Balei Tshuva. They had all the milas. They sinned to do Tshuva. The Eda over there, the Maraglim did not. Those people got they were not Balei Tshuva like the Shvatim. So that's the machlekes who you're davening with. Chabad Sola, it's Bnei Yisrael, Bnei